There are new serious allegations against Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law, and it is very concerning.
He already told investigators his story once, and for weeks that version held. No charges, no arrest, just a missing 84-year-old woman and a son-in-law who said he was the last one with her. Then a body turned up in Phoenix, and suddenly Daniel Mercer had more to say. This is the case of Nancy Guthrie, a retired school teacher, a grandmother, a woman who left behind her phone, her belongings, and apparently no sign that she was going anywhere.
There are moments in a missing person case when one new detail does not answer the question. It makes the question heavier. That is what happened in the Nancy Guthrie case. For weeks, the story was already disturbing enough. An 84-year-old woman disappears from her own home in Tucson, Arizona. Her phone is left behind. Her belongings are still inside. There are no clear signs of forced entry. No obvious struggle. No simple explanation. And then, after weeks of uncertainty, a discovery in Phoenix pushed the case into a more troubling place. An unidentified woman was found near the Grand Canal Trail. Phoenix is not around the corner from Tucson. It is roughly a 2-hour drive. For an elderly woman with limited mobility, that distance changes everything. Because if the woman found in Phoenix has any connection to Nancy Guthrie, investigators would no longer be looking at a simple disappearance from a quiet neighborhood. They would be looking at movement, transportation, planning, and possibly someone with enough access to move Nancy without creating an obvious scene. That is why the situation surrounding Nancy's son-in-law, Daniel Mercer, has become so concerning in the public discussion. Not because law enforcement has announced that he is guilty. They have not. Not because a court has reached any conclusion. It has not. But because, according to the storyline surrounding the case, Daniel was reportedly the last confirmed person with Nancy before she disappeared. And after the Phoenix discovery, he reportedly spoke to investigators again. A second statement that has been described as controversial. That word matters. Controversial. Not simply helpful. Not just additional. Not a clean clarification. Controversial. And in a case where every hour matters, where every statement is compared against phone records, surveillance, movements, and witness accounts, a second statement that raises questions can become one of the most important parts of the timeline. Nancy Guthrie was not the kind of woman people expected to vanish. She was 84 years old, a retired school teacher, a grandmother, a woman described as steady, quiet, and rooted in her routines. She lived in the Catalina foothills area of Tucson, a place where unusual activity can stand out because neighbors understand the rhythm of the community. That is important because when someone like Nancy disappears, investigators do not treat it the same way they would treat a younger, highly mobile person who could have left quickly, driven far, or changed plans without telling anyone. Nancy's circumstances were different. According to the case narrative, she had limited mobility. She did not simply travel long distances on her own. She was not known as someone who wandered off into the night. She had patterns. She had familiar surroundings. She had the daily structure of someone whose absence would be noticed. So when Nancy disappeared from her home, the first question was not only where did she go, was how did she go? Because the physical details were troubling from the beginning. Her phone was reportedly still inside. Her belongings were still there. There were no clear signs of forced entry. No shattered window. No broken door. No obvious evidence that someone forced their way inside. That kind of scene creates two broad possibilities. Either Nancy left voluntarily with someone she trusted, or someone was able to get close enough to move her without creating obvious disruption. Both possibilities point toward access. And access is one of the first things investigators look at in any disappearance from a private home. Who could enter without alarming her? Who could speak to her without making her afraid? Who knew her routine? Who knew whether she had her phone? Who knew whether she would resist? Who knew the home well enough to avoid making noise, damage, or signs of struggle? Those are not questions that point automatically to one person. But they do narrow the field. Because a stranger has to guess. A person close to the victim may already know. That is why Daniel Mercer's position in the timeline matters. According to the story, Daniel was married into the Guthrie family. He was not a random figure. He was someone within the family circle, someone who could have been familiar to Nancy, someone whose presence may not have seemed unusual. And when investigators began asking who last saw Nancy, his name reportedly became important. In the early stage of the case, Daniel gave investigators a statement. That is normal. When someone is among the last people known to have seen a missing person, investigators talk to them. They ask where they were, what they saw, what time they left, what Nancy said, whether anything seemed wrong, whether she was upset, whether anyone else was nearby. At that stage, without a body, without confirmed physical evidence, and without a clear crime scene, statements can carry enormous weight, because they help build the first version of the timeline. But statements are not final truth. They are starting points. Investigators later test them against evidence. A statement may sound clear on day one, but then phone records arrive. Camera footage arrives. Vehicle data arrives. Neighbor reports arrive. A new discovery changes the frame. And suddenly the original statement has to survive comparison. That is where the Phoenix discovery matters. An unidentified woman was reportedly found near the Grand Canal Trail in Phoenix. Authorities had not publicly confirmed the identity in the storyline you provided. That is an important detail because until identification is confirmed, responsible coverage cannot say that the Phoenix discovery is Nancy. It can only say that the discovery raised questions. But those questions are serious. Because Phoenix is approximately 120 miles from Tucson. That distance does not fit a simple wandering explanation for an 84-year-old woman with limited mobility who left her phone and belongings behind. It suggests movement by vehicle. And if a vehicle was involved, investigators would want to know who had one. Who had access to Nancy. Who could have moved between Tucson and Phoenix. Who had time. Who had reason. Who had a story that had to be checked. This is where Daniel's second statement becomes critical. According to the narrative, after the Phoenix discovery, Daniel spoke to investigators again. The details of what he said were not fully released, but the statement was reportedly described as controversial. In an investigation, a second statement can mean many things. It can be an honest correction. The second statement is where the Nancy Guthrie case begins to feel different. Because at first, Daniel Mercer's role could be described in simple terms. He was family. He was close enough to know Nancy. He was reportedly one of the last people connected to her before she disappeared. He gave investigators a statement. And for a while that was where the public story stayed. No arrest. No charges. No confirmed suspect publicly named. Just an elderly woman missing from her Tucson home and a family trying to understand how someone like Nancy could vanish without her phone, without her belongings, and without any obvious sign that she had planned to leave. But then came Phoenix. A body found near the Grand Canal Trail. A location far from Tucson. A discovery that immediately raised difficult questions, even before officials confirmed an identity. Because the distance matters. A woman with limited mobility does not simply appear 120 miles away from home without help. That kind of distance requires transportation. It requires time. It requires opportunity. And if someone moved Nancy, then investigators have to look very carefully at who had access to her, who knew her routines, and who had the ability to move between Tucson and Phoenix without drawing immediate attention. This is why Daniel's reported second statement becomes so important. The second statement can do one of two things. It can clarify, or it can complicate. If a person remembers a detail that helps investigators, that can be valuable. If they correct a timeline in a way that matches evidence, that can strengthen their credibility. If they come forward because they realize something they saw earlier may now matter, that can help a case move forward. But if a second statement comes only after a major discovery, and if that statement is described as controversial, investigators will study every word. They will compare it to the first statement. They will compare it to known evidence. They will compare it to phone records, vehicle data, surveillance, neighbor reports, and any forensic details tied to the Phoenix discovery. Because the issue is not only what Daniel said. It is what changed. What was missing the first time? What was added the second time? Did the new statement explain something investigators already knew? Or did it appear to shift the story after the investigation changed direction? That is where second statements become dangerous. Not because changing a statement proves guilt. It does not. But because changing a statement after new evidence appears can reveal pressure. It can reveal that the first version was incomplete. It can reveal that someone was trying to stay ahead of the facts. Or it can reveal that a person only began telling more of the story when they believed investigators were getting closer. That is why law enforcement does not treat statements as isolated. They treat them as layers. Statement 1. Statement 2. Evidence. Timeline. Movement. Motive. Opportunity. And if the layers do not line up, the person becomes harder to explain. In Nancy's case, the foundation of the concern remains the same. Her disappearance did not look natural. An 84-year-old woman with limited mobility does not usually walk away from home late in the evening without her phone. She does not usually leave behind the things that connect her to help. She does not usually disappear into the night without a route, without a sighting, and without someone noticing something unusual. That is why the home matters so much. No forced entry suggests Nancy may have opened the door willingly. No obvious struggle suggests either she was calm, she was surprised, or the situation unfolded quickly and quietly. Her belongings left behind suggest she did not prepare for a long trip. Her phone left behind suggests she either expected to return soon or did not have control over what happened next. Every one of those details points investigators back toward familiarity. Someone Nancy knew. Someone she trusted. Someone who would not immediately alarm her. Someone whose presence near the home could be explained if seen. That does not identify a person by itself. But it does define the kind of person investigators would examine. A stranger has to create access. A familiar person already has it. That distinction matters in the Daniel Mercer discussion. If Daniel truly was the last confirmed person with Nancy, then his account of the night becomes a central piece of the case. It does not mean he is responsible. But it means his words have to carry the weight of the timeline. Where was Nancy when he last saw her? What was her mood? Was anyone else present? Did she mention going anywhere? Did she have her phone? Did she seem confused? Did she seem afraid? Did she seem calm? What time did he leave? Where did he go afterward? Who can confirm it? Did his phone move? Did his vehicle move? Did any cameras place him on a route? Did his second statement change any part of that first account? Those are the questions investigators would have to ask. And if Phoenix is connected, the questions become even sharper. Because Phoenix is not a small detail. It is a completely different geography. If the unidentified woman found there is not Nancy, then investigators still have to explain Nancy's disappearance from Tucson. But if it is Nancy, then the case changes. It means Nancy did not simply vanish from her neighborhood. It means she was moved. It means the person responsible either knew the Phoenix area, chose it deliberately, or used it because they believed it would create distance from the original scene. Distance can be used in investigations in several ways. Sometimes a body is moved far from the home to delay discovery. Sometimes it is placed in a location that seems random to confuse investigators. Sometimes the location has meaning to the offender. Sometimes it is chosen because it is accessible, isolated, or familiar. And sometimes it is simply the place someone thought they could get away with it. Investigators would ask, why Phoenix? Why the Grand Canal Trail? Why that area? Why that distance? Why that route? Was there a connection to Daniel? Was there a connection to Nancy? Was there a connection to anyone in the family? Was there a phone ping along Interstate 10? Was there camera footage? Was there fuel purchase data? Was there toll or traffic information? Was there any movement that matches the time window? These are the kinds of questions that turn a body discovery into a forensic map. The road between Tucson and Phoenix becomes part of the case.